Welcome to another episode of the Pennock Knockdown, a podcast where we unpack key tactics and strategies for digital marketing. I've got Melissa on the line with us today. Super excited to connect with her. She is the founder and CEO of Bureau de Femme. Melissa, nice to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So, Melissa, let's start with how you got into running your own business and the work you did prior to it that led to this moment.
I started my career in magazines, actually. I was a editor and I did fashion and beauty, got into the digital side of it early. So I moved into digital in 2006 and loved it. Fell in love with all of the data and understanding how people were moving and what they were clicking. And it made so much sense to me. And so I moved over to the brand side in 2011, bounced back and forth between brand and editorial for a little bit. And then finally in 2014, really made the switch permanently to be on brand side. And my focus has really been on direct to consumer e-com and moving from content and brand marketing into more of a full funnel approach. And the agency started because at the beginning of the pandemic, when every small fashion brand looked around and thought, oh, our e-com site, that's how we survive. We got a ton of inbound interest. And so the agency grew really organically out of that and out of, having the opportunity to work with some really great brands to develop their business. So it's been really interesting. And I think at the end of the day, for me, it always comes back to storytelling. So all the work that I did as an editor and as a writer, it's all about storytelling and understanding the stories that consumers want to hear, whether that's in content or through ads.
That's interesting. What a great path to kind of get you to the position you are in and to hold that storytelling like nugget as the central theme of it all. When you're in your work right now with clients, is the pressure really on conversion at this point, or are you able to kind of do a good balance of the awareness storytelling before the pressure of we need to get efficiency out of everything we're doing?
What's so interesting to me is that in the state of marketing right now, if you put all of the pressure on conversion tactics, you just lose, right? Like eventually that funnel gets narrower and narrower and narrower. So even if you're getting the same ROAS, the actual number of orders is going to diminish, right? If you're not putting in the effort to build the brand, whether that's to engage existing customers and keep them excited about the brand or to find new customers. So I think that the approach that we really see working at this point is like, nail the conversion tactics, great. But like, if you lose track of all of the brand building and all of the awareness, your funnel just gets narrower and narrower. So I think that what's really important is that we're keeping an eye on a lot of different metrics, but I think a big one at this point is what is our level of new customer to repeat customer so that it's not just conversion, right? And that's like a lump, but we're really thinking about, is the brand growing? If you have a good repeat customer rate, are we maintaining that so that the new customers coming in, that piece is growing, but then they're actually converting to repeat customers? Because I think, there was a period with paid advertising where you were just interested in acquisition, right? And people were just like falling through the funnel. And that's just it's not scalable, but it's also not realistic for most smaller brands. You have to be able to keep the people and get people to be brand evangelists for you, right? So it's not even just come back and buy, like they have to love the brand. So I think that's really the way that we approach it. Yeah, at the end of the day, brands have to make money, the conversions have to be there. But I think that having that be the only focus, it's just not a sustainable model for most brands.
Yeah. And I think like the storytelling that you bring up and also just kind of the way people respond to ads these days is like the less it looks like an ad, the better it is for the program. So we feel like so much of what marketing is we're not a sales channel. We are a storytelling channel, kind of like you mentioned.
I think so. And I think that, the success of creator ads point to that, right? Like you literally do not want to hear from the brand why their product is great. You want the authority of someone external saying that it's great, but it also doesn't feel like an ad in the traditional way, right? And I think that that's really true at this point, right?
And you do so much more at your agency than just run ad campaigns. So kind of like talk about how you're onboarding a client, what you're looking for. And then I assume client by client, there's maybe a different weight against their email program versus ad.
Yeah, absolutely. Every client is actually really custom for us. Every business is different. And I think the way we really like working with smaller brands. That's the core of what we work with. And so, we're dealing directly with founders. Some brands have e-commerce directors. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have someone internal who works on marketing. Sometimes they don't. And so for us, we really structure every engagement based on the brand and not just based on the brand's goals, but also what is their internal structure. Because we, for many of our clients, are their entire marketing department. So we handle everything from email, blog content, PDP copy. My team has amazing graphic designers and creative directors. We'll run shoots for clients. So like very heavily sort of on the, more on the brand side. And then we do paid advertising, affiliate. And so the way that we start with clients, I love doing, it's one of my favorite things, is that we take several weeks actually, and we do a very big audit of their business. So we go through all the data, we look at everything that they've done, we take a look at also like qualitative. Here's our feedback on your website, on your social, on the assets that you have, on your brand voice. Here's what's running in your email program. We also do a competitive analysis so that we can understand what they're up against in the space and where the white space is from a marketing perspective to play in. So we always start with people that way because we really want to get our arms around the brand. And I also think you only have fresh eyes on a brand for so long, right? Once you're in the business and you know the quirks and you know the way people shop the brand, right, your opinion's going to shift. So I love doing the audits up front because we're really coming in with completely fresh eyes. And often we see things in the business that the business doesn't know, right? Because when you're you're in it and you're so in the weeds of the day-to-day of the business. So that's really fun. And from there, sometimes we'll say, listen, we thought we were going to start running ads. You're not ready. Like what we've uncovered is that your welcome series is really weak and we need to redesign it. Or the PDP isn't going to convert. We need to talk about the design of your PDP. So for us, the next step is let's get all of the fundamentals in place before we start spending a lot of money, right? If your welcome email isn't great, you're not going to convert from it, right? If your website has issues, there's site speed slowness, if there's a cart issue, you're not going to convert. And so I don't want to start putting assets and money and resources against advertising until we are like, this site, this email program, we are rock solid. So that's sort of step one. And then it really is client by client. I think that sometimes it is difficult to self-evaluate and say, do we need paid? Is this the right response, right? And is this a brand where we should be focusing more on other efforts? Because broadly speaking, something has to activate the funnel, right? So if it's not ads, what is it? I think becomes the next question. And I think that it's a really interesting question right now in terms of e-com, right? It's, do you need ads? What platform do you need ads on? Do you have the creative to make the ads go? Is one of the big questions that I think we ask, because it feels to me like it's all creative now. It really is. And I think you really see it in the ads that you receive as a consumer. You instinctively know, oh, this ad was great. Even if you don't want the product necessarily, you're like, that's a great ad, right? And so I think that not everyone is ready to roll right off the bat from a creative perspective either.
Well, I think sometimes the assumption, so it sounds like your audit sounds amazing because one, you're establishing kind of your authority and like trust in the process. You are so embedded in your client's business after the audit and having worked with however many brands that you have over the years. So they're probably really respecting that. The initial idea was we're running ads, and you're like, oh, hold the phone. We're going to go do email cleanup first. So that seems like a great place to be coming from. I think the piece about how to build awareness is interesting because I think when it's not, first of all, there's some misconceptions still that like as soon as you spend $5, you'll get $10 back, and it just goes up and up and up, and everything's beautiful and it's so efficient, and you don't have to do anything else awareness because ads is the solution. For the brands that aren't ready for whatever reason, it could be creative. What do you think is the next best like awareness lever to tell them to deploy or for you to deploy on their behalf?
It's a really great question. I think that organic social is a good place to start, right? I mean, that's always sort of our instinct is to make sure that all of the non-paid channels are solid before we start spending money, right? Like I get extremely personally stressed if I feel like I'm wasting other people's money. And so SEO is more challenging than it used to be, right? Like we're in a different world, but I think making sure that you can surface and search for people who are looking for you, that's one way. Influencer is always great. Like if the site is in good enough shape that you're good to drive traffic to it in some way and just start building awareness, starting to reach out to creators and start building those relationships, doing some gifting, that's really helpful too. And then I think it depends on the brand and how big their customer list is, right? Like, what is your email list like? What is sort of your existing base like? I think that PR is also just increasingly very important and very helpful. Like there are some people who do not check their email and they don't look in the promotions tab, right? And so maybe you're not cutting through on email the way that you used to. Are people taking breaks from social media? Well, you're not going to get them with an Instagram ad, right? So thinking about where the other places that people receive information, that matters too. Like Reddit is something we talk about now in a way that were we talking about Reddit all the time 2 or 3 years ago? No, but a lot of people are starting search journeys on Reddit or ChatGPT. So there's other platforms in the mix now where people are finding out about brands. So I think that really comes into play from an upper funnel perspective and just general brand awareness at this point too.
That makes sense. Switching gears a little bit, I was out at a networking event last night with a bunch of agency owners and mainly in like the emerging space, kind of like the two of us operate in. And one of the points of feedback was around like it's right now so easy to start a brand, whether it's like drop ship junk or buying an ingredients list and putting together your own skincare line is like so simple these days. How are you deciding which brands to work with? And like, how do you politely kind of give advice to those brands that are going to struggle because they're maybe taking like the lowest path to aim for success?
I mean, I think that we're very lucky and that a lot of the brands that come to us are recommendations from either from our existing network or from founders that we work with. But there are brands that I think are too small. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that and it's something that I've had to learn the hard way because sometimes you can be really excited about a founder and really excited about their product and like they don't have the infrastructure to go yet. Right. And so I think that is one of the questions that I really ask when I talk to people is if we start driving sales, can you fulfill them? Which is a real question. Like, are you set up right now in a way where you can scale? If we find a hero product and we're doing well with it, can you restock it? Or are we just going to be dead in the water on that product for another year until you can restock? So I think what's really challenging is like for a solopreneur who has no team at all, we're sort of too much. Do you know what I mean? There's too many of us that are rolling through the door. And so something that I started doing to help those cases actually is say, I'll do office hours. And so you're not quite ready for like the full bandwidth of what we have. But if you still need and want advice, like we can schedule phone calls and I can be a sounding board for you as you build out your business if you just need some marketing input. And so that you're able to connect and get strategy help without having to deploy the full team. And we've done the audits for people just as an audit when brands are stuck and are like, we don't know what's not working. Like, we do need that fresh eyes, and they have the team internally. Like, we've also done that. But I think that it's very challenging to cut through as a brand new brand right now. And if you don't have not just a compelling product, but a compelling story behind the product, it's very hard to get consumers' attention. And I agree. I think maybe a few years ago, you could get some really clever ads going and throw them up, and that was enough to run the business. And I don't think that that's true anymore. It's still an important component, but it's not going to be enough. So there has to be a real brand there to support.
Yeah, agree completely. Where do you think we go from here? Like, what new channels? I mean, you kind of mentioned that people are more interested in Reddit. I think 30%, if not more than that, of the AI search results are fed from Reddit right now. I'm sure it'll change. Like, what is the new frontier that you're kind of keeping your eye on? And maybe it'll be a service at Veritafem, maybe it won't, but like, where's that area?
It's so funny because I've been doing this for so long. Like, there are sort of the peaks and valleys of interest. And when I started out in retail 15 years ago, it was to build out brand blogs. And that was the big focus. And then that died. Everyone was like, oh, we want to blog. Like, that became like a dirty word. And now I'm like, you know what's really great? Brand blogs. So I think that, like, when we talk about what the LLMs are doing, they're scraping the internet for content. And so if you're this really shallow e-com site where you're just selling product and there's no other content, like, how do you think it's going to learn about you, right? And so now we're really talking a lot more about content. It's great opportunity for storytelling, but also this is how we get seen in the new phase of the internet. And so I think that that's really different, in the way that we used to write SEO blogs and would try and index and search. It's the same idea. It's just a different set of tactics and a different set of needs. So that's been really interesting that we're suddenly back into a place where we're like, oh, actually making sites really content rich is sort of back, just done differently than we used to do it, because we're really doing it with an eye towards what are the LLMs like? They like reviews, they like first person testimonials, right? So it's thinking about content for the sites in a new way. I also think that channels like Pinterest really interest me. I think that social media can feel really overwhelming for people right now, and you don't always control what you're seeing. And Pinterest is its own bubble outside of that, right? And so I think that that's become very appealing to people. And I keep reading it's very popular with Gen Z. And I get it. It feels a little one step back, right? And so I think that that's also really interesting. There was definitely a moment where I was very, very focused on Pinterest, and then it felt like my foot sort of came off the gas. And now we really see a lot of traffic and ad conversions. Like, it's both great for consumer engagement, but also for sales. So in some ways, are they net new platforms? No, but I think that it's reevaluating the tools and the platforms that you have to tailor that to like what the landscape is now.
Are you feeling that you and like brands have a lot more pressure to just output more? Like, going back to the blog and that coming back for brands and Substacks and all of that. Like, I feel like so much of it is just AI generated content. And when is the consumer going to tire of it? Will they? Like, where do you think this will go? Because I feel like it's just so much right now.
It is. It's so much. I think that a smart consumer can tell the difference. Maybe they don't care, but I think they can tell, right? It doesn't mean that they reject it just because they know. I certainly see things on Instagram and I'm like, oh, that's AI. And then I'm like, that's very cool. But I think that there is something, and there always has been, an element of luxury in something that is handcrafted, right? Like, that's a pitch that you hear over and over again from luxury brands. This is a handcrafted product, right? Like, couture is couture because it's hand sewn by le petit main. Like you have to be trained, you have to like it is your profession that you do this, right? And I remember reading years ago someone saying that they were shocked the first time that they saw couture because the stitches looked like they were hand sewn, which looked very different than even the most perfect doesn't look like a machine stitch, right? And so I think that there is an element of luxury to things that are not AI, that are really crafted with time and thought and intention. And that doesn't mean that there's not helpful ways to utilize AI. And it's not a knock against anyone who's using AI content. But I think that there's something about spending the time, the hand touch, the personal touch, those elements that just feel different. So that's sort of my take on it. Do I think that at the end of the day, brands are content producers now almost over anything else? I do. And I think that that's really challenging. that's not like, that's not a glib thing to say. Not every brand has the capacity or, frankly, the interest in being a content house, right? And so I think you can always tell when a brand has a founder who loves social media, right? It's obvious. And you can tell when they don't, and that's not something that they're super engaged with. So I think that it's really challenging for brands to make enough content. And I certainly understand why people are utilizing AI because it helps them to scale. I also think the push is always on to test as much as possible. And so then you feel all of this pressure. We have to have more and more and more content. And I think honestly, it's one of the absolute top three biggest challenges that small brands face is volume and quality of content production. And so I'm a former editor. I love nothing more than content production. So that's the part I think is really fun, which is lucky for me. But I think that it's really challenging and really expensive and time consuming for all brands at this point. But I think that is one of the fundamental challenges of e-com is how much content it requires.
I think it's really hard, especially for the founders that are just getting started, are bootstrapped, are potentially losing money every month. And then they're like, and now I have to build this little team that does this stuff, and the return on investment isn't going to be there for 3 to 6 months. Like, and that's where they kind of start and stop and start and stop. And it's, I empathize with them because it is hard to get anything off the ground organically.
It is. It's really hard, and I think that sometimes we work with brands where the founder happens to be amazing in front of the camera. The founder happens to be a great photographer and takes iPhone snaps that are just glorious. Do you know what I mean? And is that easier for us? Yeah, that's great. But I think that there are people who found brands who are not natural creatives or performers. And yes, I think it's really hard to understand. And I think it's very hard to create the space in your budget and your workflow to create all this content. It has long been, I think, one of the biggest challenges, but it just feels like it's escalating at a very, very quick rate now. How, like, the volume of it.
All right, we're wrapping up here. I've got two final questions for you. One, if you were in your early 20s, starting all over again, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh gosh, go to law school? You know what? I think that the strength of my career is I said yes in my 20s. And that's the advice I would go back and say, do it. Say yes. Yes to things that scare you. Say yes to jobs you have no idea how to do until you get into it. And it's going to be hard to learn on the job, but just keep saying yes because I think it's so easy to feel scared of next. But I always think I made the move from being in a print magazine to working in digital earlier than a lot of colleagues of mine. And I'm so glad that I did. Like, what would my life be if I hadn't said yes 20 years ago to that job?
Yeah, it's so true. Well, if people want to get in touch, maybe get an audit from you, figure out if you're a good fit, where should we send them?
To our website, and you can contact me directly through there. We're easy to find, bureaudefemme.com.
All right. Thank you so much for being on today's show, Melissa.
Thank you.